Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Well, the Leafs let another one slip through their fingers, failing to take advantage of an opportunity to once again move into sole possession. Oops. It'd help if I muted myself. Missing an opportunity to move into first place in the Atlantic. Florida lost, Tampa lost, Toronto lost. So nothing really changed. I suppose that's a good thing. But this was an opportunity to, make a statement heading into the final couple of weeks of the seasons, take an advantage, and control your own destiny a little bit. Florida and Tampa gave you this opportunity by losing. Well, I guess the teams they lost to gave you that opportunity. Thank you, Utah. Thank you, Washington. And instead, another frustrating loss. Another game they probably could have and should have won. And a weird continuing trend of not being able to score 6-on-5. That's a weird one. We'll get into that. We'll get into everything here on Game Over Toronto. I'm Dominic Jones. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe. If you've got thoughts, if you've got feelings on this game, as I'm sure you do, as I do, pop them in the chat. Pop them in the comments. We'll get to some of them as we go. We'll, of course, answer some in the overtime period. Terry getting things started in the chat saying the Leafs sucked the entire game, even when they led 2-0. I said Leafs were done and wouldn't score another goal. I mean, they did technically score another one. Didn't count. Lawton's stick was high. Didn't count, but they did score another one. But I know the feeling. I wasn't quite there. I was feeling pretty good coming out of the first period. And then Biz made the point on the panel that they were doing all right against the Sharks too a couple weeks ago. And they were coming out of that one leading after the first and blew it. And pretty much the same thing happened here. Let's go through the game. And before we do that, of course, remind you, subscribe to everything here at Game Over. Check out Hyperdrive Hockey. That's kind of the Game Over flagship. Great show covering all things hockey, NHL, PWHL, international play. Great show. It's on the main Game Over YouTube channel. And of course, is available on your favorite podcatchers like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. This game begins pretty well, actually. I thought for the Leafs, I thought they looked pretty decent coming out of the right off the hop. McMahon gets an early breakaway, has an opportunity to score. He stopped, but kind of sets a good tone for the first period. The Leafs looked like they had a lot of jump. They looked like they were playing well, and that carried forward. There was some good pressure. Holmberg had kind of a funny play where he nearly took out the goalie, but it was providing pressure, making Nashville question, if they could keep up with this game, putting them on the back foot. And it leads to a penalty on Evangelista. That's a name that came up several times in this game. He takes a high sticking penalty, and pretty quickly into the power play, John Tavares, his 30th of the season, opens the scoring. Some nice passing from Marner and Matthews to set up John Tavares. Matthew Nyes going right to the front of the net, being a screen. Like, when you see the power play clicking like that, and you think back to where we were at the start of the year when that was what we were most panicked about, it does show that, like, change is possible. Change is good. That's why we were so frustrated with the power play early on in the season, was it had the pieces, it had the skill, it had the talent, and nothing was happening with it. Absolutely nothing was happening with it. More recently, since the new year, it's looked very, very good. It's been very, very dangerous, and the power plays don't feel like a black hole anymore the way they did for a while there at the start of the year. Tavares, yeah, great goal. Tavares having a really, really strong season, putting himself, I think, in a good negotiating position when we eventually reach that conversation in the offseason. Marner scores a couple minutes later. A great play off the faceoff. Matthews wins the faceoff, just flips it over to Marner, and Marner just fires it home. It was one of those ones where the puck was in and out of the net so quickly that you almost didn't realize that it was a goal. Like, it was so quick. I was like, hey, wait, what? I thought he hit the post. I thought it was a save. I thought it was anything but a goal. But then he was celebrating. The ref was pointing in the net. And all of a sudden, things are looking pretty good. It's 2-0. Now, if you're Terry in the chat, as he said, he was worried even from this point. He wasn't feeling this night for the Leafs. But I think a lot of us are probably thinking things are looking all right. Things are looking all right. And a short time later, things look like they're going to be even better. Scott Laughton, who has been struggling ever since he got here at the trade deadline, desperately in need of something to go his way. Oh, it looked like he scored. Looked like he popped it home. It was looking pretty good. We thought, hey, this is good. It's going to be up 3-0. The tip-off was that he didn't really celebrate the goal. Everybody else kind of celebrated the goal. He kind of went, yeah, I hope, but I don't think so. And he as he was going down the handshake line there at the bench, it kind of, you could kind of tell he didn't think it was going to stay. The refs called it a goal on the ice, but ultimately they chose to review it. And yeah, it was a high stick. He tipped it in off a high stick. And again, the key was that Laughton, the guy who scored it and needed it, didn't really celebrate. But again, it looks like things are going to go all right. There's a 3-on-1 with Tavares, Nylander, and McMahon. That's pretty exciting. It gets disrupted, but like things are still looking all right. The kind of turning point, I think, where things stopped going all right was the very last play of the first period. Matthew Nyes takes an interference penalty with 2 seconds left in the period. The whistle doesn't even go until the horn goes. So it's a penalty called at 20 minutes of the first period. Leafs are going to start the second on the penalty kill, which has been a real weakness for this team. Not all year. All year, it's off the hop. It was very good. More recently, it has been a real weakness, and we saw that as soon as they came back for the second. Wall tries to freeze the puck during the power play, during the penalty kill. He's unable to. Nashville beats him to it, and standing just off center of the goal, Michael Bunting. Now there's a name I've not heard in a long time. Bunting puts it home, 2-1. Not the best start you want for the Leafs for the period. Tavares, Nylander look like they might be able to get it back. They get a 2-0. It's broken up at the last second by the back checker. Tavares definitely was kind of showing pass the whole way. He didn't really, I think, make Saros or anyone else think that he was going to shoot, and ultimately that cost him, because everybody was waiting for the pass to Nylander, and therefore it was easier for them to handle it. They disrupted. Nylander wasn't even really in a good position to shoot. Kind of a awkward play for the two of them. And honestly, it's after the 3-on-1, you look at in the first period, you look at it and go, okay, you want them to handle that differently, but it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. You get a 3-on-1, sometimes it doesn't work. The 2-on-0, or that kind of becomes a 2-on-1 that follows it, where again they're not really clicking. They're kind of not putting themselves in the best position to take advantage of these rushes. They're not. And when I say putting themselves in the best position, I mean that like literally. Like they're not in the best position on the ice to handle the puck. So, or to handle the puck and put it in the net. So not a good look for them there. And a short time later, you miss an opportunity like that, you wind up paying for it. Kiefer Bellows, I believe, spent some time with the Toronto Marlies last year. He ties it up, 2-on-1, and this time sort of the opposite of Tavares, as I think Chris Cuthbert pointed this out Craig Simpson pointed this out on the broadcast. Kind of did the opposite of Tavares, where Tavares was looking to pass the whole time. Bellows looking to shoot the whole time. Fires at home, gets it by Woll. I think you wish Woll had that one. The bunting one, you wish he'd been able to freeze the puck at the moment that he was trying to. But it was a great pass and good play from Bunting that you want the goalie to stop every shot, but if that one's going to go in, you kind of go, okay, fine. This Bellows one, you kind of got to have that. Kind of got to have that one. Waldo kind of makes up for it a few minutes later. Makes a huge save on Forsberg, on Philip Forsberg. Nearly said Peter Forsberg there. That would have been about a decade plus ago. Big save. There's a rebound. Forsberg gets it in the slot. Woll makes a big right pad save on it. It's a good save from Joseph Woll. What he needed after giving up those 2 goals to start the period. Makes a big save like that. Some good play from the Leafs. Some positives that again made me not feel like the world was totally ending. Lawrence, however his name is pronounced. Steven is robbed in the slot. He takes a shot from the slot, saved by UC Saros. UC Saros, aside from the 2 goals, looked pretty solid in this one. I don't think he was, the best version of UC Saros that we've ever seen, but he was solid. He gave Nashville what they needed to win, but including on that play. Brandon Carlo kind of got stuck at the blue line with a weird kind of funny bounce that got past him. And Simon Benoit, who later in the game didn't put his team in the best position to win, made a really good play coming back and kind of bailing out Carlo. He comes back from the other side of the ice all the way down. There's kind of a near breakaway happening, and he takes care of the shooter, makes sure he can't really do anything, allowing everybody else to be in good position. Strong play by Benoit. Benoit was one of those guys. He does a lot of decent stuff out there, and then he does the boneheaded stuff where you go, "Oh, can this guy be part of the team? Is that really? Do we really have a spot for him?" We'll talk more about his errors shortly. Forsberg then takes the lead for Nashville. A 3-on-1, and unlike the Leafs 3-on-1, the Preds take advantage of it. Tanev tries to do kind of the diving play to break it up, but the Preds, were smart. They held on to the puck for as long as they did. They didn't try and overpass. There's a shot. Woll makes the initial save, and it kind of leaves the rebound there. Not the best sort of. Not the kind of thing you want to do. That's the word I'm looking for. I'm trying to find a real dramatic way of putting it, but really it's just not what you want to do. I think that's that. You want to make the save, which is good, but he leaves the rebound there. Forsberg kind of pokes it home. It's a 3-on-1. It's tough. It's tough for the goalies, tough for the defenders. It's what makes the earlier one kind of frustrating for the Leafs, that they had that opportunity and didn't take advantage of it. And this one just does this, but this one works. The Preds are able to take advantage of it, and you got to give it to them. Third period. Here's the opportunity to come back. You're only down by 1, not the end of the world. You can come back. Any team can come back in that situation. Things start fairly lackluster. McMahon gets a decent chance going to the net. It's not the most dangerous chance, but it shows maybe it's something you can build on. And then Max Domi takes the unfortunate puck over the glass penalty. I feel like Domi's been playing a lot better. He's been playing a lot better these last couple of weeks. He's been shooting more. Even in this game, there were a couple opportunities where he did actually fire a shot in the direction of the net. I guess he called that a shot attempt, where in other situations in the past, he might have passed it off. He scored some goals. I saw him score on Monday against Calgary. I was there for that game. Saw him score the opener. So he's shown some life. And so in this moment where he's starting to build up some confidence, a play like this has got to be a bit of a backbreaker for him. And Nashville takes advantage of this. They don't quite score. They don't score on the power play, but they create so much momentum. It's all Nashville all the time. Even after the power play ends, they are just dominating the play, to the point where in an attempt to break up the play, Chris Tanev nearly put the puck in into his own net. That would have been real bad. He is breaking up a sort of cross ice pass, and he deflects it, and it nearly goes right into the Leafs goal. Thankfully it doesn't, but a few minutes later, Luke Evangelista actually puts it into the Leafs goal. Just a pass off the wing to him in the slot, fires it home. Again, it's kind of one of those ones you want Wool to have. Brandon Carlo maybe overcommitted a little bit, is a little too aggressive in pursuit of the passer, and that left Evangelista open in front of the net. But that's ultimately, one that, well, it's a good shot and a good play, and you don't want to take it away from the guy who scored. It is one that you want your goalie to have, especially in this sort of situation. Matthew Nyes draws a high sticking penalty. Things are maybe looking up again. There's lots of time left. You think, here's our opportunity. Here's a chance. Maybe they can get one back, and then who knows what happens in the last couple of minutes. Nothing really happens. Nashville actually gets a shorthanded chance, which that's never good. Never good. And they kill off the penalty. They kill off, or Nashville kills off the penalty. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I'm looking at my notes and thinking about the next penalty. Nashville kills off the penalty. Not great. Not a great situation. Nothing really gets going with either unit for the Leafs. Not their best effort on the power play. But, with about 6 minutes left, you're still thinking, okay, there's still a decent amount of time to score 2 goals, and that's when Simon Benoit takes a slashing penalty. Benoit's an aggressive player. That's his style. That's why we like him. That's what he brings to this team. Sometimes that's really beneficial to the team. Sometimes it's really helpful, really useful. And then other times he just takes it a step too far and winds up in the box. When there's a penalty late in the game, you look for who it is, and when it's him, it's always a situation where you're like, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that it was you. Not surprised it was Benny. Again, he brings a lot to the team, but he can't keep taking that sort of penalty. Just can't keep taking that sort of penalty. But, Nashville got a shorthanded chance. Maybe the Leafs can get one too, and they do. Kampf and Lorentz get a shorthanded 2-on-1. It stopped, but there was a moment there where it almost looked like the Leafs were about to get a setup in the offensive zone. 4-on-5. They controlled the puck, and they looked like they were maybe going to press a little bit for the shorthanded marker. Berube was keeping Matthews and Marner on the bench at this point, obviously saving them for the final push after the penalty kill. And as they pointed out on the broadcast, maybe you regret doing that when you saw the shorthanded opportunity. And, love Steven Lorentz, love David Kampf. They're not Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner when it comes to scoring. They have a job to do on this team, and they do it well. They did it really well in this situation. And I mean, Lorentz got the game-winning goal the other night in ridiculous fashion. But if you're looking for 2 players to have a 2-on-1, you're probably wishing it was number 34 and number 16 rather than number 64 and 8. What's Steven Lorenzo's number? Can't remember off the top of my head. So the Leafs managed to kill off the penalty. Yay, good. And that leaves them with about 4 minutes to press for 2 goals. They pull Wool early. They play gotta be 90 plus seconds, 6-on-5. Lots of pressure, some opportunities, but lots of pressure. And they force the Predators to ice the puck. They take a timeout. They press again. Nothing comes from it. And Philip Forsberg gets the empty netter, steals it. 5-2, final score. Nashville beats the Leafs, and nothing changes at the top of the Atlantic Division. Funny how that goes. And you know there's going to, the next time all three of those teams play the same night, they're all going to win, and nothing's going to change again. Again, it shows how important that game against Florida, not this past week, but the week before was, and how big an opportunity that was too, one that they squandered. We'll move into our second period here on Game Over Toronto in just a moment. As always, again, want to remind you to make sure you are subscribed to Game Over Toronto on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your shows. That way you can know when we go live, or you can listen to the shows after the fact, and you'll never miss an episode. We're live after every single Leafs game, either myself or Zach Payne or Lauren Williamson, trying our best to make sense of what is happening with this team. And so again, Game Over Toronto on YouTube. You can watch live, you can interact live. David in the chats got a lot to say, and we will get to some of that soon. David, don't you worry. We will you can listen live, and of course you can subscribe on the podcatcher so you can listen after the fact if you can't tune in live, because it's too late, you got to go to bed, you're out, maybe you were at the game, and you're just not ready to listen just yet. Maybe you're too angry about what happened and you need a few minutes to cool down. That's fine. That's what the podcast version is for. In our second period, we'll talk, as we always do, a little bit about some of the things that are kind of season-long trends for the Leafs. The two things that the thing that I think has plagued this team all year has been, in one form or another, has been playing any situation other than 5-on-5. 5-on-5 all year, they've been relatively consistent. They've had up games, they've had down games, but that hasn't been a real, concern. The 5-on-5 play has generally been all right. It's been more than all right. It's been good. That's been kind of a strength of this team. And at different points, one element of the special teams will be good. At the start of the year, the penalty kill was terrific. They were great. Power play was absolute crap. Couldn't get a goal. Couldn't do anything 5-on-4 or even 5-on-3. But 4-on-5, or we won't go with 3-on-5, but 4-on-5, hey, they could stop anything. Then the new year happens, and it's like, Freaky Friday, the two switch. If the power play is, I'm not going to finish that metaphor, but they switch, and then the penalty kill kind of has been crap lately. And they're allowing a lot of power play goals against. One tonight. But I thought for a second there might have been more, but there could have been more. But they did allow one tonight, and they've allowed one in it feels like every game. I'm sure that isn't the case, but it feels that way. It's not been pretty. Power play, on the other hand, has looked pretty strong. The first power play that we saw tonight was excellent. Fantastic. You love to see it. The other two that they got weren't as effective or any, and sometimes they looked a little listless, but overall you're fairly happy. If you're getting a power play goal every game or every other game, you're doing something right. You're doing pretty well. So that's working. So they've had this sort of Freaky Friday switcheroo thing with the power play and the penalty kill. What has been bonkers all season is how bad they've been 6-on-5. And look, you're not going to score every time you pull your goalie. Sometimes you're going to get scored on. That's just how it goes. That's how things go. But whenever they pull the goalie, it's sort of that same feeling we had with the power play early in the year where it's like, oh God, they're not going to get anything done. They're not going to be able to accomplish anything. And if I'm Craig Berube and the coaching staff, and I'm looking at like the last couple of weeks of the season heading into the playoffs, if I'm thinking about what I'm working on in practice, honestly, it might be this. It might be 6-on-5 pulled goalie situations, because the playoffs are truly like, there are games that are win or go home. You need to be able to get a goal when you're down by 1 or even down by 2 late in the game. You need to be able to press for that goal. And pulling the goalie is a key part of that. That can, make or break a game. And if you can't score 6-on-5, and you're basically just opening up your cage for the other team to fire at, that's going to be really bad in the playoffs, because you need that advantage. So, and the playoffs are a different animal, and you're going to need that advantage. So if I'm the coaching staff, this is something I'm sitting down and looking at and going, how do we fix this? How do we make this work? How do we convince, or how do we create systems, create plays where we can score? Because there is going to come a time in round 1, whoever it is against, be it Tampa, be it Florida, be it Montreal, be it Ottawa, be it Columbus, New York, any of those teams that are battling it out for those wild card spots, there will be a game where you will be down by 1 or down by 2 late. And if you win that game, maybe you win the series. If you win that game, maybe you get an advantage in the series. If you win that game, maybe you tie it up, or you avoid putting yourself on the brink of elimination, or you avoid elimination altogether. There will come a point in a playoff game where you need a goal late, and you need to be certain, you need to be confident in your team's ability to score with your own net empty. Right now, just not. So if I'm on that coaching staff, weirdly, that's one of the things I'm thinking about going into this. That's one of those things I'm thinking, what if we tried this? What if we worked on that? I'm also working on the penalty kill. Like, I almost feel like you forget the the 5-on-5 stuff right now and work on special teams and unique situations like this. Because the penalty kill, I don't get what the Leafs do with their penalty kill. They don't seem very aggressive. Have you noticed this? You notice like good penalty kills are getting in the way of pucks. They're getting sticks in lanes. They're challenging the player with the puck. And then the Leafs are sitting back and they're waiting. It's like they're willing to concede a lot of the zone and they just sort of protect right around the net, which if that was working, fair enough. If you were really good at making sure that anytime the puck got in there, that then you could clear it out. But they don't seem to be good at it. And so they just allow all this passing, and they don't challenge anybody. And I'd like to see them get out there and challenge a little bit more. David in the chat. Here's what David thinks about what should happen on the at the next practice. He says after the first period, the Leafs stopped playing and started sitting back way too much. Time for a bag skate to send as strong a message as possible that the performances like a 5-2 loss to the Preds aren't acceptable. Yeah, maybe it's time to recreate that scene from Miracle again. I can't whistle again. Tweet again. Do it Roy Kent style from Ted Lasso. Whistle again. Whistle. But it's a bad game when that's what we've resorted to. So we'll wrap up our second period here and move into the third. Again, want to remind you, if you're enjoying enjoying Game Over and you want to take your support to the next level, if you want to support financially, you can join our Patreon, patreon.com/the Game Over Network. There's different tiers there, lots of fun perks that you can get during the Four Nations. That was the place to be, to get some great coverage of that tournament. So I would definitely recommend checking out patreon.com/the Game Over Network. You can also support us on our LaRouche crowdfunding campaign. That's for companies based out of Quebec, which Game Over is. And if we reach our goal there, we can unlock some government funding. Yeah, we can get the Quebec government to pay for this Leafs post-game show. Wouldn't that be fun? Patreon.com/the Game Over Network, or you can go to LaRouche and support us there. Links all in the description for this video and this podcast. All right. Third period. It's interesting. This is something that I was sort of thinking about going into the game. Back, if you can remember, 4 hours ago when we were feeling hopeful. We were feeling hopeful that maybe like good things might happen. Good things might happen. I'm just looking at the chat. Luke Venables, just for the record, you called it. I am too grumpy at the loss to participate, but I am listening. Oh, thank you, Luke. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's funny. Terry says at least the Habs lost. That is good. I'll take that. Take that. A little Schadenfreude, seeing as I'm sure the Habs fans were enjoying some Schadenfreude at our expense. But point I'm getting at is back before times, before tonight's game. You were going into it thinking like, with the Atlantic was tied, as it still is, and there was this opportunity to take advantage of it, which I'd say a week ago, we were feeling pretty down on that possibility. I didn't do any shows this past week, right? Lauren and Zach handled Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, the Flames, the Avalanche, and the Rangers. And the last two games that I did were the Colorado loss, the 7-4 one, and the game against the Senators where they lost. We did the crossover with Game Over Ottawa. We lost 4-2. And in between those two games was the Florida loss. And at that point, it felt like there was also a shootout win against the Utah Hockey Club, for anybody who's keeping track and wants to correct me, fact check me. Daniel Dale, if you're listening. But it felt like after that Sens game, I remember being on with Charlie from Game Over Ottawa, and it felt like winning the Atlantic was out of reach. It was out of our grasp. It wasn't possible. Fast forward a week, here we are, Saturday night, Hockey Night in Canada again, and a couple of bounces go another way, and we're talking about the Leafs being atop the Atlantic. The Leafs play better than they did. We're talking about them being atop the Atlantic. And it just sort of goes to show just how much hockey there is left to play. Like, I don't know if we fully appreciate that. Like, there's still close. It's still 10 games to go in a relatively short amount of time. And that's not to say that we shouldn't react poorly to a game like tonight where they wasted this opportunity. But it doesn't mean they're out of it yet. Doesn't mean the Atlantic isn't still winnable. Points wise, still tied with Florida. Things go a little funky for the Panthers in the next 10 games or so. Suddenly we're looking at it going, we might run away with it. Alternatively, the Leafs could be the Leafs and follow into third and let Tampa have home ice advantage in the second round. Hell, Tampa could overtake both of these teams. There's still a real winning culture there that could prevail over the Leafs and their culture of whatever we have here, and the Florida more recent winning culture. So it's still possible. It's still plausible. That's my glass half full kind of look at this. My glass half empty take, that's the way words work, is that I'm a big Blue Jays fan, right? I love the Jays. I was going to say looking forward to the season. That's maybe not the right words for it. Dreading how this season's going to go, but looking forward to having baseball back, I guess is how I put it. But when I look back on recent Blue Jays history, the biggest missed opportunity was not taking Barrios out of Game 2 of the wild card series against the Twins. It wasn't blowing the 8-1 lead in Game 2 over Seattle in the wild card series. Both of those were big missed opportunities, including and especially taking Barrios out, and especially losing blowing that 8-1 lead. But the biggest missed opportunity to me is the 2021 season, when they didn't make the playoffs at all. Now, that was the last year played with the old playoff format. And it's kind of, when we look back on baseball history, it'll be kind of an anomaly, right? Because they brought in the new format for the weird 2020 COVID season. They went back to the old format for the 2021 season because the PA and the league couldn't agree on anything. Stop me if you've heard that one before, NHL fans. And then the following year, once they had the new agreement, new collective bargaining agreement in place, they went to the new playoff format, the one that we've got now with the wild card series and all that fun stuff. And so in the 2021 season, there was 2 wild card spots, but it was for that winner take all game. You know, the kind of game that they played in 2016 where Edwin hit the walk-off Parrott on the elbow. It was great. The 2021 season, that was the best version of the team. And they were in it until the very last day of the season. There were all sorts of scenarios, all sorts of things that were being planned for and prepped for by the teams in the league for tie breaks and additional games and all sorts of things. And the Jays did what they were supposed to do on that last day of the season. They won. They won their game. And then they just needed one of either Boston or New York to lose. And both Boston and New York won. So the Jays missed the playoffs. It was funny. I was there for that last game. And the game ends. And they put on the Red Sox game on the Jumbotron over center field, right? And everybody is like getting up ready to leave. And we're like, okay, it's time to go home. Maybe we'll catch the end of the game when we get home. We see the Red Sox game's on. And we go, ooh. And everybody sits back down. And then Rafael Devers hits a 2-run home run. The Red Sox take the lead, and everybody sort of gets up again to leave. The Jays had in the 2 weeks leading up to that last day of the season, that last game where they did what they were supposed to in that last game and still came up short. They had several opportunities to beat the Yankees, beat the Red Sox, leapfrog them in the standings, and secure a playoff position, or at least put themselves in the best position they could going into that last day of the season. And every single time that they had that opportunity, they came up short. And so they left their fate up to the Yankees and the Red Sox. You never want to do that. You always want to control your fate, and you'd never want to leave it up to the Yankees and the Red Sox. And so even though they succeeded on the last day of the season, and, you know, it was still COVID rules in the Rogers Center, so, you know, it was a limited capacity crowd. I think they were up to 25, 30,000 at that point. Still not the full 45, 48,000 that could get in there at the time. But it felt like everybody there when that game ended, everybody there felt really good because the team had done what they were supposed to do. Springer gave an interview with Hazel May on the field that was broadcast into the stadium, and everybody was loving it and going nuts. And then they lost because they had lost. They actually lost in the 2 weeks leading up to it when they didn't press their advantage. They had these chances, much like tonight, to get over their version of the Panthers and the Lightning in the Red Sox and the Yankees, and they didn't. And they missed the playoffs. And that was, I think, is going to be one of the biggest missed opportunities in Jays history. Because they could have done something in those playoffs. They had a better regular season record than the team that won the World Series that year. The Atlanta Braves. And Alex Anthopoulos. Don't we miss him? Won the World Series with a worse regular season record than the Jays, who missed the playoffs. So they could have really done something magical in the playoffs. And a lot of teams were afraid to play in the Jays in the first round that year. But they lost in the 2 weeks leading up to the final game, to the end of the season. And that's what I'm worried happens to these Leafs. Now, obviously, they're not going to miss the playoffs, but they lost that game to Florida. And then they lost this game where they were basically handed the Atlantic on a silver platter. The two teams they needed to lose lost. And they did nothing with it. And so I would hate I'd hate to see this situation basically play out the same way it did for the Jays, where they drop the ball and then Florida's going to drop the ball at some point. Tampa might drop the ball at some point, and everybody keeps dropping the ball and nobody's able to like really definitively claim top spot. And then you go into the last week of the season or the last day of the season, and all of those missed opportunities like tonight, they end up with, playing Tampa and potentially not even having home ice advantage. Not getting to take on a wild card team because they blew it in these other games. So that's my concern. The folly of the 2021 Toronto Blue Jays. Hopefully their fate is not repeated by the 2024-2025 Toronto Maple Leafs. All right, let's move into our overtime period. The chat's been popping off. We'll get to some of these comments in just a second. I'll remind you, if you want to keep up with me in between shows, at Dominic J25 is the place to do it. Mainly on Instagram, also a little on Twitter and a little on Bluesky, but at Dominic J25 on Instagram, that's the spot. Also, you can check out my Star Wars podcast. If you're watching this, you can see in the background there's lots of hockey stuff, but there's also more Star Wars stuff. And we talk a lot on the Star Wars pod about, anything that goes on in the galaxy far, far away. We'll have lots to talk about. Andor coming up around the same time as the playoffs. So I will be stressed, and that will be fun. So do tune into that. Star Wars Underworld is the show. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, same places you listen to and watch Game Over Toronto. Okay, let's see what we got here. I think there's some interesting discussion and debate happening in the live chat. So, and we're celebrating the Habs losing. Though David does point out the Habs did get a standings point. That is better. It's better than losing outright like the Leafs did. So we'll give them that. Luke says, I'm not Canadian, so I don't have the hardcore rivalries baked into my DNA. So I'm kind of rooting for all the Canadian teams to make the playoffs. That would be cool. Genuinely, that would be cool. And look, we have our rivalries. We don't like the other teams. We don't like their fan bases on Twitter. And then you actually meet a Habs fan or a Sens fan or a Jets fan or an Oilers fan. And you realize, oh no, we got more in common than we don't. And so it's one of those things. It would be cool. I think I'd be happy for everybody here at Game Over to everybody would get to do playoff streams and just be happy for the Canadian fan bases. The Stanley Cup's got to come back to Canada at some point, hopefully carried by the team in blue and white with a maple leaf on their chest. That would be the ideal scenario. But sooner or later, there's not been a Canadian team that has won the Stanley Cup in my lifetime. I missed it by a year. David says, I respect the Habs for their post-1967 Cups, although I do hope another Canadian team will win a championship this season. Whether any of the Canadian teams, Flames, Oilers, Jets, Leafs, and Sens, win a playoff series is still TBD. Of those non-Habs Canadian teams, only the Oilers have an active streak of seasons with playoff series wins, 3 straight seasons. Damn, what a stat. What a stat that is, David. Only the Oilers. The Oilers are the only Canadian team. God, it's been tough to be a Canadian fan. I mean, the Leafs have made the playoffs every year for a while, unless you don't count the 2020 bubble, which maybe we shouldn't. But even still, they've made it for at least 3, 4 years, 3, 4, 5 years in a row, and they won only one of those. But yeah, that's tough. But it'll be cool if, the Habs and the Sens, if they make the playoffs, that'll be exciting for their fan bases. Sens haven't been in the playoffs in a very, very long time. Habs, of course, had their magical run in 2021, but since then it's been tough times in Montreal. Oilers, I think it's not looking great over there, but they have a tendency to look really, really bad at points, and then Connor McDavid just goes, nope, my turn, me, I will take over. Luke in the chat says, do you have any faith that Berube can make a difference in the games that matter during the playoffs? It's a tough question. Because I sort of feel like a coach is most felt over the course of a season, right? They come in at the beginning of the year, the training camp, and they start trying to mold the team into what they want them to be. And then they do that over the course of 82 games. And whether the team is successful oftentimes directly correlates to how much success the coach has in molding them into their vision, what the coach's vision is. In an individual game, I don't know how much impact the coach has. They can adjust the lines, they can challenge a play here and there, but really it's the players. It's the players that determine this. And so what we'll find out in the first round, and hopefully beyond, is how successful Craig Berube was at getting his message to this team over the course of the entire year, rather than any decisions he's going to make in any individual game. Sheldon Keefe loved to shuffle the lines. Berube does it less, but he still does it. Just does it from time to time. Maybe that can help in a game. When you pull the goalie can help, but really, the actual game is decided by the guys on the ice. Everybody else is impacting the margins, and sometimes the margins is enough. Sometimes that's enough, but they ultimately the players are the ones that decide it. And so I'm not totally sold on the idea that Berube or Keefe or Babcock or anybody else, is directly responsible for what happens game in and game out. They are responsible for what happens over the course of the season, yes. Any individual game, I put that more on the players who did good things or did bad things. Let's see, what else we got here? David in the chat says, perhaps this PWHL season there will be a win of a Walter Cup by the Scepters, Toronto, the Charge, Ottawa, or the Victoire in Montreal. Also, Canadian adults, women's under 18, and men's and adults team will win over the next 2 months, or at least they'll have the opportunity to go for gold, with the PWHL not scheduled to have games until the Women's Worlds is over. Certainly easier than watching who knows how much playoff hockey being played by Canadian leagues. So it's opportunities for winning up ahead, certainly. Scepters have been playing pretty well lately. Pretty well. Big Scepters fan. Season ticket holder right here. They've been playing some pretty good hockey. They got off to a real bad start, but they've pulled themselves into a pretty good spot heading into the break. They still got a couple of road games left heading into the break, and if they can sort of keep up the level of play they've been at, then they'll be in for they'll be in the playoffs certainly. And look, last year Minnesota won it all. Then they were the team that We're the fourth place team. So there's plenty of opportunity in there. And, losing in the first round, you hope, motivates you to do better the following year, as we've seen with the Leafs. Not always. That's not always the case. Interesting. Terry in the chat says, unfortunately, I have to admit I've practically watched every Leafs game twice this season, and so far I haven't seen what they call Craig Berube hockey yet. Terry, why have you watched every game twice? Like, I don't get me wrong, I can understand the appeal of watching certain games twice. I certainly understand the appeal of watching every game once. Watching every game twice. Damn. Yeah, it's interesting. Interesting that again, like I said, the players determine and dictate the play more than the coach does. The coach can sort of try to mold a team to what they want, but in a situation like Toronto, where so much of the roster was already set before Craig Berube got here, and like set in their ways too, set in their ways, they don't like to change these guys. There's only so much he can do. There's only so much he can do. It'll be interesting to see. Maybe we're just not seeing it. Maybe it is happening. And like I said, it's happening on the margins, and that will become clear once we get to the playoffs and the style of play changes a lot. But right now, yeah, if I'm honest with myself, I'd be hard pressed to tell you what the big differences between Craig Berube's style and Sheldon Keefe's style are. Be hard pressed. It's because it's the same players. It's the same guys. Terry says, I like to watch the Leafs games twice to analyze them, see what the Leafs have done right and wrong. Fair enough. That is absolutely valid. I admire that level of dedication. That's impressive. And honestly, game over, we do them when the game is over, right after the game. I almost wish I could watch them twice. I wish I could watch them twice to really know what to look for to talk about on here. And so I absolutely get where you're coming from. For the Star Wars Underworld, I watch every episode of whatever TV show. Watch it twice before we talk about it, so that one time just to kind of enjoy the ride, and then one time to kind of nitpick the details so that we have interesting things to talk about. It'll be interesting this year with Andor, which we're just going to talk about Star Wars for a second here. They're releasing every episode. They're releasing 3 episodes a week for 4 weeks. It's going to be crazy. It's basically be a movie to watch. It's going to be harder to watch everything twice than it was with the, sometimes 35-minute episodes of The Mandalorian. Anyway, that's cool. That's awesome, Terry. That's awesome that you watch every game twice and pick apart the team. I love that. Love that. All right. That's where we're going to leave things. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. David, Terry, Luke in the chat. Pleasure chatting with you guys. Thanks for keeping things lively and keeping things going. Lots of good discussion and debate in the live chat, some of which we got to on the air, plenty more that we did not. So do tune in live, and you can join in that conversation that's happening with the folks in the chat and with whoever is hosting. We will be back for the next Leafs game. It will be, when is that? On Tuesday, when they take on the Flyers. Should be an interesting matchup. I think I'm doing that one as well. Where are they being released? Star Wars. They're being released on Disney Plus. Tune in there. So we'll be back on Tuesday for another game. Game over. Toronto after the Leafs take on the after the Leafs take on the Philadelphia Flyers. Tonight, they lost, though, 5-2 to the Nashville Predators. Frustrating opportunity missed to take over the top place in the Atlantic. We'll see where we're at in regards to the race for the Atlantic in a couple days' time when they play on Tuesday. But thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see you next time.